Thank you, Matthew. So, and thank you, Kevin, some inspirational thoughts just there. So I'm really going to build on what Kevin's saying around really laying down a gauntlet and thinking about the art of possible here in Cornwall. I'm going to largely do so through describing a project the RSPB has been involved in right at the other end of the country on the East Coast in East Anglia. And I really want to get you pondering what might be possible if we really, really think big. So before I move over to East Anglia, though, I just want to give us a bit of faith that we can do it here in Cornwall, actually, and we've already done some big, ambitious, visionary things. And to pick but two examples which I know very well the RSPB have been involved in. So firstly, cell buntings, this lovely farmland bird species which only exists in Devon and Cornwall, and went nearly extinct in the late 80s. So less than 100 pairs of this species in Devon and ever so slightly in Cornwall in the late 80s. Through 25 years of intensive conservation intervention and brilliant partnerships with brilliant farmers and landowners, we've got this population back up to over 1,000 pairs in Devon and Cornwall, a miraculous transformation from near extinction. And as part of that growth, that population has been restored to the Roseland Peninsula in Cornwall through a reintroduction project through captive breeding, the first of its kind in Europe, the first time we've ever in Europe reintroduced a songbird species back into the wild. So a fantastically ambitious and visionary project, a sustainable population from near extinction, going to show we can do it. And another set of examples, so seabirds on the Isles of Scilly, on the populated islands of the Isles of Scilly. This is the Manx shearwater. The UK holds 80% of the world's breeding Manx shearwaters. The UK is massively globally important for this species. And the Isles of Scilly is one of their strongholds, as well as Pembrokeshire and parts of Scotland. But the inhabited Isles of Scilly, many Isles of Scilly are riddled with rats. Rats eat the eggs of ground nesting species like the Manx shearwater. And on St Agnes and Goo, two of the populated islands, although Manx shearwaters are breeding in very small numbers, they were never productive, so they never raised chicks. The eggs and the young always got eaten by rats. So we, in a very successful partnership, have just rid St Agnes and Goo of rats a couple of years ago, the largest community-based rat eradication program in the world, literally the largest in the world here in the Isles of Scilly, and with instant success. So you take away the rats, that's a huge undertaking. I'll say it in one sentence, you take away the rats, massive undertaking, and instantly you go from birds which are breeding in small numbers to raising no chicks, to birds which are now breeding last year, 73 pairs of Manx shearwater with 32 chicks. The first time in living memory we've had chicks breeding on the inhabited islands of the Isles of Scilly. And another species, storm petrel, which had never bred on the Isles of Scilly and the inhabited islands in living memory. There were 6 pairs breeding last year. So we can do this big ambitious stuff, and we've got much bigger plans to continue ridding the rest of the inhabited islands of the Isles of Scilly. But we can do it here in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. Let's not forget that. But I think it's nice sometimes to look away from home and look at what's happened elsewhere and learn from and be inspired by what's happened elsewhere. So I'm just going to run you through the story of a project which the RSPB is involved in for a number of years. Possibly our biggest, our most audacious project we've ever done. I'll let you be the judge of that, and hopefully it sparks a few thoughts around what might be possible here. But before we get on to the detail of this, I'm going to just jump to the end, actually. I'm going to start with the finish, so to speak. And in pondering this project, the Wallersea Wild Coast project, and other big ones I'm aware of, I kind of thought there's 5 ingredients to success that I want you to think about as we go through this, and I'll come back to them at the end. And I think a lot of these ingredients are already encapsulated in the environmental growth strategy. So first off, you've got vision. You need to have a vision, and you need to stick to it, and you need to stay rigidly focused on that vision and delivering it. You need to think big. That needs to be a big vision. And don't ever let the concept of something being too difficult make you think it's impossible. Many of the biggest, best, most successful projects have felt too difficult at one point in time, but they've happened. You've got to build support. You've got to build cross-sectoral support, community support, political support, and create great collaborations with the unusual list of suspects. And the example I'll talk about later is one of those such things, the most unusual of suspects. Actively seek and adapt to opportunities. In this day and age especially, when it's so uncertain what's going to happen, what might come your way, we can't plan very much, but what we can do is be ready to respond to and look for those opportunities. And lastly, we need great leadership. Leadership from organisations, leadership from government, leadership from individuals. We've got some great leaders in the room. We need to apply ourselves to making this happen. So back to Wallersea Island. So this is an island of about 700 hectares, about twice the size of the City of London, in the upper Thames estuary. So it's in Essex. There's a bit of a confusing angle. This is looking south. So that large mouth at the bottom is the Thames estuary with Kent at the very top. And Wallersea Island's in the Essex part of the Thames estuary, bounded by the rivers Crouch and the Roach. It's pretty typical, it was pretty typical Essex intensive arable farmland, very typical stuff from the east of England, but also very low-lying as well. The land there, because of compaction, soil loss and accretion outside of the land, is about 1 metre below the mean high water mark, and I'll come back to that because that's a very significant point in the context of this project. And consequently, it required significant flood protection enhancement in order to carry on farming it. But the state weren't prepared to do that. The state weren't prepared to invest in significant enhancements of flood protection for the sake of farmland. So, meanwhile, whilst all this was going on, the context being that the RSPB, the Environment Agency, were looking, in response to sea level rise and low land levels in the east coast of England, looking at opportunities where we could create large-scale restoration of intertidal habitats which had been lost to sea level rise, habitats like this, through managed realignment. And Wallersea Island came up trumps. So go back to it as a classic area, large area, low-lying. And the owners of Wallersea Island, or the farmers, Wallersea Farms Company, had the foresight, and I'd say they were quite progressive in realising that they couldn't farm there forever, and whilst they had capital asset there, they should realise that asset and invest elsewhere. So they were looking to move out of Wallersea and invest in land in east of England. So the RSPB took a pretty bold step and took up a 2-year option agreement to buy this land, 700 hectares, and that was 2 years was a ticking clock for us to find the small sum of £50 million, easy job, to do the biggest planning application we've ever done, to do a big managed realignment over this, and to build, support and design Europe's biggest managed realignment scheme. So 2 years to do just that. And all the while, as I say, with an area of land which is 1 metre below mean high water, so therefore you can't just knock through the seawall and create intertidal habitats, it will just become water. So we're left with the option of, do we manage lower water levels, which is almost impossible, or do we raise land levels over an area twice the size of the City of London? So how do you do that, and how do you figure that out in 2 years? Well, luckily, while all this was going on, a small engineering project started in London called Crossrail. Many of you may know about this, a large tunnel effectively underneath London, creating a brand new railway system from east to west. And because most of it is tunnelled, they have an awful lot of material coming out of those tunnels that they need to put somewhere. You kind of get where I'm going now. And looking to put that material to beneficial use and dispose of it in the most cost-effective way possible. So to cut a very, very long story short, a fantastic, perfect symbiotic relationship emerged between the RSPB, the Environment Agency, and Crossrail. Again, to cut a lot of negotiations short, Crossrail underwrote the project costs to the tune of just shy of £50 million. Of huge benefit to them, so a huge financial and operational benefit for them, removes a lot of risk. So they effectively underwrote the project costs, and RSPB did the consents, the design, brought the knowledge, and made all this happen. So, 3 years of boat movements. A special jetty was built at Wallersea Island. 3 years of boat movements, 1,723 boat movements in total. Just over 3 million tonnes of excavated material. At its peak, 10,000 tonnes a day was coming into the island. And this was all spoil coming out of those tunnels underneath London, being used to create higher land levels in order to have a viable managed realignment scheme on the island. And anyway, to cut things very short, again, lots of designs and redesigns later, lots of big Tonka toys and fun equipment later, and Jubilee Marsh was created and breached in July 2015 on what was formerly extremely intensive arable land. Already, there are 30,000 wintering birds using this site already. It's the best site in east of England pretty much for wintering raptors. It's the second best site in the UK for breeding avocet already. And you can see there's still lots to do. Crossrail weren't able to give us all the material we needed, so there's still a big gap here. So the plan is over the next few years to create what would be Europe's largest creation of a coastal lagoon system, a coastal saline lagoon system, something like the kind of Salinas of southern Europe, which would B, by far the best avocet breeding site in the UK, probably hold 3 times as many avocet as anywhere else in the UK. So really, really big stuff for a fantastic collaborative partnership. And from a site that has had absolutely no visitors before, it's now on a trajectory to receive about 70,000 visitors a year, thanks to the facilities that have been developed, again, underwritten through that partnership with Crossrail. So going back to those conditions for success, let's just think about, how did this happen? So fantastic vision, great vision from both us and from Crossrail. I mean, impressive vision to think about how you can create a new railway underneath London. I bet Crossrail came across a lot of things that they thought were too difficult, but they made it happen, and we did too. We built support. There was universal community support for this, fantastic political support and statutory support, and of course we built that brilliant, kind of very novel collaboration between the kind of public/private sector of Crossrail and the NGO sector of RSPB, finding that mutual benefit, finding that sweet spot, and making brilliant things happen. And we, of course, it all came about because we were looking for and seeking innovative opportunities. And I've skirted through 1,000 things that changed in that project and that required us, as both parties, to adapt and change, but we did so. And, of course, there was great leadership. I'll say so myself, great leadership from the RSPB, great leadership from DEFRA and the EEA, and great leadership from Crossrail to make this happen and to make their own project happen. So I think we have many of the ingredients for success of this in Cornwall already, and as we've spoken about, this is a groundbreaking document, a groundbreaking event that I think would happen in very few places elsewhere in the country. So we have the ingredients, I think we have the leadership, we have the vision, we just need to make it happen. And I'm not sure if I've got the last 2 slides here. I have, yes. We've got fantastic habitats already. There's great things we can make more of. But I thought I'd leave us pondering, it's particularly sweet that we're here of all places, I thought I'd leave us pondering the really big stuff, the real blank canvas. And there was I don't know if you noticed, there's a lovely interpretation panel as you come down the walkway into Eden. And the very first one is a picture just like this, really, very similar to that. And it just says, if you believe, ... Well, if we believe, we can make amazing things happen. And the concept of creating habitats on a vast scale in clay country, linking landscapes, connecting nature, connecting people, creating experiences for millions of people, as they've done par excellence here in the Eden Project, is there if we believe it can happen. Thank you very much.